that size. It's really hard to answer right now without actually seeing their projections as well. So our pilot program has 3 officers using it right now. And once we get the hardware upgrade, we're going to put the rest of them out in the field.
So the rest of them will be what? The whole group of 81?
Patrol officers. Strictly patrol.
So the point there is that from a storage perspective, I'm just asking, if we're going to use our own servers to store, we're going to have a lot more video to store. And that's really why I asked the question. Because if you mentioned about putting it out in the cloud,
Yeah.
that's why the cost of the cloud is so high, because you're storing a lot more out there. So I don't know, has Bill
Yes.
taken into account?
So that was, before we made that decision, I spoke with Bill Chin, and he said with the server size he has with the WatchGuard program that we already have, which is our in-car cameras, that's the in-car cameras that have been mounted in the cars for years. The body cameras we bought are WatchGuard also. So he has assured us that the server space that we have is adequate.
Okay. So I just wanted to check on that.
Yep.
Because if you expand it, you're going to need more storage.
Yeah.
You can't build it, and then you're going to need more.
Yeah.
We did invest in a dedicated video server just some years ago, anticipating we would come into the situation. We already had the video storage from the vehicle cameras, and now that we're expanding the number of body cameras, it'll be as high as 23 ultimately within the year. We have what we calculate to be adequate space for the all dedicated video files.
How long is the plan to keep that for?
Well, it depended on the case. If it's a criminal case, we have to keep it for until the criminal case is disposed of. Right now, the way the policy's written, 90 days.
Now, is that a manual process to remove those, or do you archive the ones that are attached to the case and then the system automatically?
The ones that are attached to a case are tagged by the officers and saved. And then I'm not certain how Bill has it set up for the others to just be deleted over a period of 90 days.
We can ask Bill.
Yeah, so there's a lot. The body cameras. Well, see, that was one of the reasons why. Initially, when we got the body cameras, myself and a lot of chiefs in the state did not put them out initially because one, the policy wasn't done, and when the policy was done, they required the 90-day retention period. The state law only requires 30 days. So myself and many other chiefs are like, wait a minute, if I have to keep this for 90 days, and someone comes in and files a Freedom from Information request for you of the camera or the whole department or 5 officers, and I want to see what they've done for 90 days, that is going to create a lot of manpower and a lot of time. And I think I said this to this board last year, a lot of time. So because you have to go in, is it a medical call? Are there HIPAA things? Are there juveniles involved? Do we have to cloud out their faces? Do we have to cloud out what they've told us? It's a lot of work. So we were very methodical about putting that out and trying to tweak the policy that's going to work best for all of us, because I don't want to be burdened with the expense. I get enough Freedom of Information requests as it is anyway that we have to comply with. So we're looking, there's actually a bill before the legislature this year that is saying if someone files a Freedom of Information request for body camera uses, the town can charge them per hour to do that, because that's a big fear on the Connecticut Chiefs Association is that's going to happen, and it's going to be another mandate that we have to comply with. We have to do.
$1 a page doesn't cover it.
No, 50 cents a page.
50 cents a page doesn't cover it.
So, body cameras are a thing that are going to happen. It's going to be done. I'd rather do it at have us do it before we're forced to do it through some type of legislation. Because even one of the grants that they put out last year, if you took money to buy cameras from that grant, it put all sorts of restrictions on it. The grant we used did not put those restrictions on us. So we're careful about those things, because I don't want to burden the town with additional expense. We've got body cameras, but it's going to cost us, some astronomical number to be able to get the information from people, or for us to keep it every year. I don't want to do that. I would like to be as efficient as we can, like with anything else.
And do you still have the substation at the mall?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions on the police department? Yes, Vicki.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
just want to say thank you for all that you do. Certainly, I also speak for Teapot, and thank you for all of your support. And that grant money for the TIPS line was paid for years through the state grant that Teapot had, but we now have a federal grant, and we can't pay that money through the federal grant. Won't support the TIPS line. It's just a rule that unfortunately we have to follow. So, question about the SROs. I know we've got the one at the high school who's been a home run, quickly fit in and has just done a fabulous job. Where do we stand now with the middle schools?
Okay, so our plan right now is Madison Middle School to put another school resource officer there. We were really trying to manage a lot of the overtime also, but so we're going to try to put that person in Madison Middle School either on or about April 1st. And my plan was they would be in the school for maybe 8, 10, 12 weeks before the school year ended. So in September when they come back, they've got a good relationship and a nice foundation with the faculty and the students that are there. At the latest, the third SRO at Hillcrest, September, when school starts.
Okay, and just a question about the high school. There used to be a police officer there during school hours. There used to be in the patrol car outside,
right.
I believe.
Yeah.
Is there no longer an additional officer there now since you have the SRO?
No, that car's still there.
That car is still there,
Yes.
and that police officer is still in the parking lot, or are they in the school?
In the parking lot.
They're in the parking lot?
Yep.
Okay.
That's something I'm told they've had for 20 some odd years.
Right. I
But
just...
we don't pay for it. At least the police department doesn't pay for
Okay.
it. It's a
Does
special.
that police, now that the SRO is in the school during the day, does that police, he's just outside?
He's outside.
He's
or
outside.
she, yes.
Okay.
I don't think they were ever inside.
No.
They were always just out there in the
In
parking
the
lot.
car. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I just...
Yeah. Only
you know,
if they had something to happen, naturally they.
Right,
could.
occasionally you do see them go in, but just,
Yeah.
they're stationed outside in the parking lot.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yes.
We just approved a lot of bonding for the firing range upgrades and so forth. Just want to know why we have portable restrooms for the firing range?
No, the portable restrooms are for the locker rooms.
The
No.
other firing range, the outdoor one.
Oh, the outdoor range. Oh, I thought you meant okay, because I was thinking capital when you said that, the bonding. So
Just reading the
we have had that for years. The Indian Ledge, where the officers have the outdoor firing range, we have a porta john out there. Yeah. And then when you mention bonding, when we get to the capital part of, we'll have to shift. Oh no.
No, we have two. We have two ranges. Okay, anything else? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Let's take our break. We have all of about 15 minutes to grab food if we want to start back on time. Thank you. Hey, it's better than we did. Let's come back to order. First item on our agenda is Probate Court. Welcome, Judge Rowe. We are on page 23. Good afternoon. Yes, please. This
Okay.
way they can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe I'll just give a real brief overview and then questions or if I miss something. The Probate Court, as probably everyone knows or most of you know, we've got the towns of Trumbull, Easton, and Monroe, which comprise the district. There's 54 probate courts in the state, and the judges are elected and have 4-year terms. Most of the salaries and benefits for the staffing and such is paid through the state. The member towns within the district make up the office supplies and postage and other items. So I can go through. We've got 6 individual items that we break it down into, and the numbers are about the same as they were last year, with one exception. We now microfilm everything. That was a regulation that came down a few years ago. So we're microfilming not only that which comes into the court, but that which we already have. We've got a vault downstairs underneath the town clerk's office next to the old holding cell. And we're starting to microfilm some of that. So that is a $4,000 annual budget, and we usually hit that, if not leak over a little bit, simply because of the volume. Our telephones, which we pay for, we use the town's system, but we pay for it, is $4,300. That's a reduction of $40, reflecting the different rate that we got this year. Office supplies is $4,200. That actually went up $200. We're mailing out. The volume's up a bit, so we're mailing out more envelopes. Need more paper. That's reflective of that. Postage is the biggest jump, and that's we had a budget of $6,000 last year, and we're just sending out more notices. So that request is $7,000, and I'm hoping we're able to make that work, because it's becoming expensive with all the items we're sending out. And then the last one's legal publications. That's for legal notices and such. It was $300 last year, but we only, I think we're anticipating only using about 150 or 200. So we've asked for 150 this year. And lastly, our copier, Gail found a better rate, so we're able to reduce that to $2,500. I'm not sure if that was very boring and too in-depth or not enough. So if there's questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
One was just on the notes on the front. I'm gonna guess it was a typo. I just didn't know if we needed it correct. It was effective July 2103. The probate rules of observance. I didn't know if it was 2003 or 2015.
We must be looking at a, yeah, I don't know if we generated that, but I don't. Okay. It's not the year 2103, if that's what it said. Good question, though. Right. That is actually a good question. And I think my understanding is we're still in the discussion for the town, sort of being wrapped into the town. They might. Yeah, we had talked about it briefly. Yeah, so we would be happy to make Bill Chin work harder, but if the numbers work out and make it less expensive, then we ought to pursue it. I think there was a reason why that might have been difficult, but I'd be happy if we were included.
I have a couple questions on your services and ancillary fees. This may just be terminology, but we're saying microfiching. Do we just mean, we don't mean actual microfiche. We mean digitalizing? Like, we're not putting it on rolls?
No, you're correct.
No, you're right. It's the old. The regulation still calls for microfilming.
Okay.
But no, we are not doing that.
No, well, the state has some weird requirements, so part of me wouldn't have been surprised if you had said yes. Once you digitalize the records, you are still required to keep the records.
Certain of them, wills, for example, but not all. Right. Once we digitalize, we're able to do two things. One, we can send to storage. There's a sort of a clearinghouse, an Iron Mountain of sorts.
Oh, jeez.
That
But you're still keeping the paper backup.
Only the wills.
Yeah, just on the wills.
Okay.
Right. So we have wills downstairs from, the 50s and the 60s. The court came about in '59 here, so we have those wills, and we will have those wills.
For how long? It is like there's no...
Until the best practice is to not have them. So, but everything else, once it gets digitalized, is shredded.
It just strikes me the government keeps allowing records to be digitalized and then makes you hold the original records. So why did you make me waste the money? All right, well, digitalizing makes them a lot easier and quicker for me to find, but it's as if they don't accept it as the true record. I mean, the will's a typed sheet of paper most of the time anymore. I granted some of your old ones may be handwritten. Not even that, probably.
We saw one on a napkin today, actually. We did.
World. Okay, so we'll
Yeah, we
forget
don't know how
about
we're going to digitalize the napkin, but we'll figure it out.
copy it on a copier. Okay, and then my other question, as the rest of us have been beaten up rather heavily by the state and the new proposed budget, are there any impact on your operations?
Well, on the day-to-day, no, but the probate court system generally receives, asks for about $7 million annually from the state to all the functions. A lot of it's salary and benefits and such, but other items. And that's been cut in half by the governor's proposal. He also, a couple years ago, the governor cut us back and our fees were raised. In other words, when you go to probate a will and you file an application, there's a $220 fee. It used to be a $150 fee, so that went up to $220, and it may go up again to offset that cut. You know, Peter and Paul and everyone being robbed.
But I assume something has to go up because the $3 million that he took away, you still need to run the system. So if it's not
Correct.
being paid out of our state taxes, it'll still be paid in the form of a fee, a user fee by those who file.
Correct. And you could also change the estate tax rate. We have a cap on how much any estate can pay. Right now, you could eliminate that.
But
Well,
does that
that's
not all go as revenue to the state and not back to the probate
like
department?
just about everything, right?
Do your fees stay with the probate department or they go back into the state general fund?
Right. Anytime you make a check out, it's out to the state of Connecticut treasurer, and then we deposit it up there. They keep track of what we bring in, but it's not a dedicated account.
Okay, here's where I'm getting really confused. It takes $7 million to run the probate departments of all 50, you said there were 55?
Yeah, 54.
54. So the budget that's going to be on the state end will be $4 million instead of $7 million. While the state might raise that fee, the fee still goes to them. So how does the probate court make up the other $3 million?
It's a question that is being asked by many people, not just the Trumbull Board of Finance.
Yeah, we have this funny habit of balancing budgets in this room, and we like to do that. And I'm trying to figure out a bunch of ways that I can't make the state one make sense to me. Certainly a lot of what we have isn't making sense, but that one made no sense. If you could raise your revenue, if you could raise your filing fee, and the fee went to you to replace the $3 million you're losing, it would make sense. But if that fee is still not going to you, I'm not clear unless he has another idea of throwing. My inherent concern is they want to throw the rest of that $3 million onto the towns that are being served. Therein lies my worry.
Right, and it's probably not an unreasonable worry, but that hasn't been
Fleshed out.
yet.
Why bother? Let's put out a budget that doesn't have the details while the rest of us need to balance a budget by the 24th of March.
Is that a question?
Nah, only unless you have an answer.
No, ma'am.
All right, any questions on probate? Yes.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Revenue. There's a new revenue line in our budget for probate rent for Easton and Monroe for $8,685. Do Easton and Monroe know about that?
Yes. I received an email from the first selectman on February 7th of this year, and it was actually a letter that he had sent to First Selectman Vavrick of Monroe, the First Selectman Dunsby of Easton, with copies to Maria, and then John Marsilio and Rena Bacalar. And set forth, just as you said, that the town of Trumbull was going to begin charging rent at the rate of $8,685, split proportionally between Easton and Monroe. But your question was only, do they know about it? Yes, they know about it.
Okay, the other question is, have they put it in their budgets so that it's going to come to us? If their budgets are approved, I should say.
Right. That I don't know. I did speak to Adam Dunsby, who's the Easton First Selectman, and he just had some general questions about this process. And I did a little bit of quick research. Of the 54 probate courts in the state, 40 of them are multi-town. You know, Bridgeport, for example, is its own, and Stamford is its own, and Stratford and Shelton are, but there's 40 that have at least 2 towns, and some as many as 7 or 8. Of those, 9 of them include the host community receiving rent. How they do it differs, but generally speaking, the default is the proportion of the grand list. Some also do it on per capita, I guess. So, but I think since this has happened so recently, I can't say for certain that Easton and Monroe have, you know, called up anyone and said, great, where do we send the check?
Right. Okay. Just wondering how the almost $9,000 figure was arrived at for the rent.
It might be a question for Maria, because the letter, and I should say, background, you know, there had been discussions of the Trumbull Court moving out of Town Hall, and we'd looked at, I'd say, 8 or 9 places, most in town, 1 or 2 places in Monroe, and one was at Chalk Hill in Monroe, and that looked like it might happen, but it didn't. And there had been, it had been thrown out there, even I think maybe last year or the past couple of years coming before you, that the town would have the right to charge rent. The letter that I received indicates that the Director of Public Works and the Director of Economic and Community Development developed these rates based upon average office square footage rent in town, and then prorating the fees accordingly. So that's probably what was done.
It's based on 1,350 square feet of using space right now at $15 per square foot. So that comes down to $20,250, and then we prorate it based on the population. Monroe gets 26.38%, and Easton 16.5%.
Yeah, and just one more question, if I could. I know I read somewhere recently about a further regionalization of our probate courts, that's being discussed. Do you know anything about that?
They had, it's a good question. They had, up until 2010, I think, was when we did the change. There were 117 courts. We knocked that down in the legislature to 54 as a cost-cutting move, and it saved several $1 million. There are still whispers of further consolidations, none too serious at this point, but it's, I guess, the proverbial work in process. But I don't think there's any immediate talk about further consolidation.
Thanks.
One of the court's area of responsibility is legal guardianship. How many cases do you see of that in a year's time?
So we have temporary or permanent guardianships, and Gail will kick me or correct me, but I mean, some weeks we'll do half a dozen, and other weeks we won't do any. Would you have an estimate? Yeah, I was going to say 2 dozen. She said under 25, so they come, and it often happens that there are multiple kids within the same family. So we may get a family with 3 kids. Although I think that number has upticked. This is my 4th year, and I'll bet you even those 4 years, We've gone up every year a little bit. So you're talking about the schooling issue. We do get a lot of applications in August, and I would say that a dozen, every bit of a dozen of them are because, and I can say it because the school wants, some legal proof of residence or guardianship. Yeah, I would say so. I don't have the exact numbers, but yeah, I would say there's 12 to 15 or 18 maybe, roughly. Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Good to see everyone. Good luck.
We are going to need it.
Keep my taxes down, please.
Next up is technology, page 79. Yes?
Just for our notes, Bill did check. We will be switching over to the voice over IP.
Yeah, the probate's phone lines were added in the town hall count, so they will be included.
No, it doesn't, because there's a piece that's missing. When you take all the savings, but you don't pass on the bonding cost, the number that TR's put in his budget is a total number for the expenses of the phones. It's then split 3 ways, of which we take 57%. Those towns are not taking 43% of our bonding expense, so somehow that number has to be adjusted so they pay a piece of this every month. Because I, for one, am personally tired of carrying 2 other towns that we've carried for 50-something years. So while we want to figure out a piece of it, what's being transferred, we need to take a better look so the whole thing is in there. But you're right, outlay for us every month may be slightly less, but it's not going to make an impact. But that was the argument some of us had all along, that they're getting free rent, they're getting access to our heat, our air conditioning, our electricity. And none of that's getting charged back to those other towns. And 1,300 square feet of town hall space is a premium. So they're getting a buy at $15, because if I pay rent somewhere at $15 a square foot, I'm still paying utilities. So I think the rate, if anything, was too low that we have charged our neighbors. I think we've been taken advantage of for a lot of years. But that's just my gripe. So I hope they put it in their budgets. All right. So yes, sir, we are to you.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
How's everybody doing?
We're doing well. How are you doing? How's your new phone system coming?
We're in progress. It's a long, drawn-out process. I'm sure Vinny's told you all about it. We are currently reviewing the RFPs that came in and the bid results, and our consultant's working on trying to figure out what the costs for each of them is going to be over the course of 5-year, 1 year, 5 year, 7 year kind of projection. Obviously, with a hosted solution, you pay annual subscription, annual support and maintenance, and it's fairly stable every single year, and that's an operating expense. On a premise system that we have in-house, you have to buy everything up front, so there's a big capital expenditure up front, and the maintenance on ongoing support is a little bit less every year. So we're trying to figure out which systems are going to be better. Unfortunately, Avaya, which is one of the major players in the voice over IP space, just filed for Chapter 11, so that affects what we potentially might do. It's a great system, and if they end up going under, that might impact our brand new voice over IP system if we select Avaya. So we've got to weigh those cost benefits and figure out where we go. So it's
Are there a lot of companies in that market?
there's a few major guys. I know Mitel, Cisco, Avaya.
Okay.
There's a bunch of them, but Avaya is probably like number 2, number 1 or number 2 in the space. So
That's scary.
it was very interesting. We got that announcement like right as we were opening the bid, so it was great timing. Sure.
Okay. So what would you like to tell us about what's going on?
Oh, let's see what's going on in our budget for next year. A lot of it's the major project that I guess we're adding in capital outlay is for computer upgrades. We are about 4 to 5 years old on a lot of our workstations, and so we're looking at trying to get funding to replace some of them on an ongoing fashion. That way we don't have to do all of them all at once. So that's kind of the big project in our capital outlay. Also in the capital outlay is a computer lab for laptops. So the HR department came in and asked for 10 laptops for testing purposes when they issue civil service exams. So those laptops would be used in that purpose, and we would probably use them for other trainings if we had a Munis training, or currently we're working on an EnerGov project where we would utilize those laptops. That's what that line item is for. Other than that, it's pretty much standard budget over last year. The contractual obligations are fairly the same, similar. Voice over IP, as I'm sure you guys know, has been moved to my budget, so there's seems to be a big increase there, but it's because everybody else's budget was moved into mine for that. And I guess that's about it.
Couple things. First of all, on the PCs, the Board of Education followed the model where leasing and turning over every 3 years. You look for capital here.
Right.
Don't you want to do something with the 3-year turnover to extend the life and maybe lower the cost of funds?
Yeah, I actually didn't know they went with that model. The last time they purchased them, so leasing is an option we can look at. We've traditionally not done that, but that doesn't mean that we can't.
I think when we did the Board of Education one, I think it came out to be something that could be competitive and basically take it back and keep the technology fresh.
Right, I have a lot of vendors that call to offer that service, and either 3 or 5 year, whatever your period term would be, and you just pay for it and know. So.
The 3 years, maybe you get all of what you want versus what you cut.
Mm. Okay.
That's the first thing. The second thing is that I've been involved with the phone stuff too, and I know that proposals are different. So I'm going to ask you the question: when you did this budget, what was the assumption that you used? Would you be using a premise-based system and it'd be bonded, or you'd be using a hosted-based system, or a combination of the both?
I think when we built the budget, the number that we put in for services would cover either system. So the support or maintenance would either cover the hosted solution or the premise solution.
If it's hosted, I think this might be under. I mean, just remembering that number in some of the proposals. Not to say those are the final numbers, but that might be low.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull my document up here. Okay.
I just want to make sure that we account for it appropriately in the budget, because we don't have the answer yet as to how it's going to go. You know, to the point about the Avaya thing, Avaya is still operating. They still will operate in bankruptcy. The question is going to be the longer-term support, if they're going to retain the type of support level that we would need, especially if we took a product over a 5-year life. We don't know what's going to happen to Avaya. So, there's other alternatives, and the other alternative is not bad either. Now it becomes a question of function and price. But to
The other thing I don't understand, well, there's a lot I don't understand, but when we stick to this system, we added 100,000 to your account for the VoIP service, but we reduced all the departments for their frontier costs. What I'm confused about is why is there any telephone cost then left in the individual department?
Their cell phones, I think Verizon or some AT&T, I believe.
But those are cell phones, so you're telling me the only thing left in departments are cell phones?
No, that may not be
No,
true.
there's something else.
Okay,
There might be costs associated with like fax machines and other alarm lines for elevators
and they have to
security
stay
and stuff
on
like
regular phone lines.
Right.
The assumption is everything can't go over the VoIP. There's certain things that you're gonna keep out of it, things like the elevator or some emergency lines, maybe faxing may not work as well. So those costs are still gonna be out there. And based on what's been done, is everything's been moved to him, essentially. However, like when I asked a question about the emergency management,
Yeah.
he had numbers there that he still had money. So that money is either cell phones, or he said the 4 business lines that he had. I just wanna make sure that he didn't short himself for stuff that he may still need. That is not gonna be covered by the VoIP. Because what could happen with this is that at the end of the day, after this is all sorted out as to what we buy, other departments may come in and say, listen, I used to have this, and now I need this again because the solution doesn't cover it. That's all I was just trying to go with.
And I guess what I'd like to understand better department by department is, well, then what's left in it? Is it cell phones? I mean, the number still seemed high for just faxes and cell phones. And I was misunderstanding, thinking the money that we were pulling out of the departments was the savings from the new system. But all we've done is transferred over where we put it. And so the second part that confuses me, is there this is not predicting any savings from the new phone system after we've approved a bonding of, I don't remember, $900,000. So we've got, almost $1 million in a system, but we're not having a budget that reflects a single dollar of savings.
Yeah, that's something that Peter talked to us about at the end of the last meeting. Yeah, I guess one thing that we talked about was that our current phone system is so old that our support contract support company isn't able to really keep up with maintenance and fixing it. So if a part breaks, like literally they're going to their scrapyard to find a part from an old piece to put on through, and they can't guarantee that they'll be able to do that depending on which part breaks. So, if God forbid something were to happen tomorrow, they wouldn't be able to necessarily guarantee, even though we're paying that contract, that they'll be able to fix that phone system to keep it up and running. And so that's one of the major reasons why we need to modernize our equipment. In terms of savings, there probably won't be a whole lot of savings on the new system, but it will give you a modernized system that does a whole lot of different and more advanced features than what we are currently using.
Maybe taking a different look at it. If you depend on the type of technology which is selected, which means that if you do a hosted system, there really isn't an asset you're buying, just phones that go on desks. So there really isn't a hard asset that you're buying that you can depreciate over time. Whereas if we buy a premise-based system, we buy an asset that sits on our premise here in the police station, for example, and the phones. And that would be something that would be considered to be a CapEx and something that would be depreciated. My question to you a couple of weeks ago was, is that the same as doing a bond? Because it becomes an operating expense if you do
Right.
host it. And I think that makes a whole different pitch as to what happens here.
I don't think if you do a hosted system, you're going to meet the definition of being able to bond the initial cost, because you're not acquiring an asset
Yeah.
other than theoretically the phones. But I would think in a hosted system, they're covering everything, including replacing the phones.
Which goes to the point of whether we pick a hosted system, we should probably, if that's true and we want to go with the bond, we should eliminate the hosted systems. But then that changes the way we did the bid process, because we were trying to be open and being hosted or premise. And that's what we've given out to vendors. So I
Well,
just
but
wanna
we-
get that all on the table. It just
Right.
makes it a lot, very confusing, but that's really what's different.
But then we would only be considering the premise bond bids if we decide that we can't bond the other way.
True, but then now we have the Board of Ed that has a separate, could be on a hosted system as well. So then we'd have to do the same thing there and then go to the vendors and say, listen, hosted is not gonna be in our view, we're not gonna do it because we've already bonded it. And to the
Well-
point about the savings, all you're doing is displacing one cost and putting it into another, so then that you might save something, but
But okay, the fact that we bonded doesn't prevent us from go to the hosted. We can make a decision that says financially, hosted is better for the town,
okay.
for whatever reason, in which case the bond that was authorized is never spent. The bigger problem is all the budgets will be short what it needs for the monthly payments or the annual payment, and that's wherein you have a problem. So unless you had an answer prior to the budgets happening and prior to our deadline, because the council can't put it back in if it's missing, but effectively, after our voting deadline, hosted system is dead because the money's not in the budget to pay for it. Unless you do a supplemental, which, like I said, hosted system is dead.
And then you look at, if we look at like the cost of a hosted system, I'm just picking one bill. I think it was like $127, $127 a month, okay? Yeah, something like that. But it was up there.
Say that again,
What was?
127,000 a month?
No, it was 127 annually.
Oh, okay, I could have a coronary.
Okay. That was on the low side of one of them. That was I think the cheapest one.
The average host. So we've moved over only, what, 100, so that would only make us short $1.50. I mean, that becomes a problem, yeah.
How much is the Frontier bill? The Board of Ed has a sizable Frontier bill, I would imagine, so that is gonna be reduced. I know we have to do some pieces of it, but that Frontier bill,
Well-
for the most part, should offset some of this.
Some of it.
I just don't know how.
And that's why I was questioning what's left in the departments we looked at this morning. Every department we looked at had some telephone left. Now, could that in theory all be cell phone and fax machines?
It's cell phone, it's charter, and Bill, maybe you can address some of that too. It's cell phone, charter,
What's the charter bill for?
actually, I'm looking at the table,
Charter connects the sites.
yeah, where would we see the actual charter, but even on the Board of Ed side, do they have a
Will it be in their
phone
budget?
bill in there?
Well, they've got a utility bill somewhere in there
Somewhere in there
that,
we'd have to look at what that amount
But they
is.
had the same question in their budget too, because depending on which way you go with it, because I don't think they increased, if I remember right, looking at the Board of Ed budget, I don't think they changed much year over year for the cost for their telephone in their budget. I don't have it in front of me now, but I don't think there was a big change.
right, and what it looks like is we kept the same, just moved where some of it was. The 100,000 we moved into Bill's department, we took an equal amount out of other departments.
There was more taken out.
So we've actually reduced our expenses by 32,000. That ain't gonna happen in a hosted system. But so I guess my question would be, why did we put it out to bid that way without considering this particularly large issue? Or at least having had it, you needed to have it settled before we budgeted, before we started our budget process.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate overlap in timeline is causing this problem. We wanted to go out to bid on either system to allow us the flexibility to make a decision on one or the other.
Well, you'll have that
based on the
flexibility, but
price.
that would be a year from today.
Right.
So it's a year from today, because you're not going to have numbers for us in the next 45 days.
We might.
Well, you
We
take your
might,
best
because
shot at it by
we're hoping to have a meeting on March 2nd, March 3rd, whatever that Monday is.
And I think that we'll hone it down to get closer to whether a hosted or premise makes it. And the other piece of it is we should be able to get what the OpEx is for each scenario. Because that's what's really gonna hit the budget.
Right.
Is the OpEx, not so much the CapEx.
No.
So that's what we have to sort out. And that would happen not only for the town, but also for BOF as well, because we need both of those.
Right. And one of the questions I think we need to ask the Board of Ed is how much they have allowed in the budget they gave us, because in theirs, they're going to have the same things too. They're going to have internet, and they're going to have cell phones. So we need an answer as to actual phone expense, what is in their budget. And we know what's in ours, and so therefore, it's going to be it's going to be pretty difficult to go to hosted and add this much to operating expenses in this year, unless there is a hugely clear savings.
Looking at the quotes that we've seen so far, this is my gut. This is not, I didn't even show it here, but I looked at I guess the top 3 or 4 that I took home to detail. I thought that the posted would play for the Board of Ed as a possibility because of the way they're configured, because of the number of buildings. But I thought that the premise would play for the town because of the way it's configured as well. That's the first cut at looking at it, but that's a hybrid type of solution. And only, I think, 2 of the vendors offered a hybrid solution.
That they'd allow us to select, the Board of Ed to select one way and us to select the other.
That was the way it worked. There were a few that just did either or, and those probably would not work for both. However, we could do premise-based for both.
And why is the other better for the Board of Ed? Because there's so many physical locations?
Because they're spread out, it could work out to their advantage, and they could be able to save some money. We haven't even negotiated prices to that end.
Right.
But the point is that a distributed system with a cloud-type solution makes a little more sense because of the geography of the way the solution's laid out. However, the schools are all connected back into like a star configuration. So again, coming down to the negotiation side, it might come out cheaper to be premise. So that's where it is right now, and the consultant's trying to put some of these facts
Okay.
together for us.
And if they went premise-based, could their physical server be only in one place, or would they have the
No,
expenses?
They would have the high school, and they would have the other building, which is the administration building. However, there was talk about that potentially moving.
Right.
And if that moves, then it plays
Expenses
to-
all over again.
Then you've got to move the whole hub and all the expenses. That's why they make more flexibility.
For the Board of Ed. Whereas we have,
We're not moving.
we're not moving, but we do have multiple buildings.
But not as many to support. And some of them, I think it's pretty easy they have internet access. It's easy to
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of buildings all around too. I mean, there's probably eight buildings on the fiber, 7 or 8 buildings on the fiber, and then 3 or 4 or 5 on cable modem that are kind of standalone. But yeah, the bid put out for survivability, so each site, town side and Board of Ed side, would have a minimum of 2, I guess, home server-based locations. For us, it would be here at Town Hall and the Police Department, and on the Board of Ed side, right now it's designed as the high school and their admin building. So if one site were to go down, the other site would automatically take over.
Okay. All right. Questions? Yeah.
For Ed.
And the first selectman had taken out of the professional development $22,800 for New Horizons computer learning. What will that do to you?
I think we're okay with that because I fought for the other one that they wanted to cut. They wanted to cut the land desk training in the professional development in-house side, so I really fought for that to be held, and I was okay with allowing the $22,008 to go from New Horizons to essentially pay for the land desk training. I think that's right now more important for what we're trying to do.
Now, for the overtime, I know we talked about it last year. It's for after-hour projects, but in the last 2 years, it's doubled.
Yeah, so it's meant for after-hour projects and for emergency situations and projects. One of the projects that we did over the summer actually ate half the budget of what we have for this year, and we haven't actually had, luckily, any major knock on everything. Major issues thus far since our project over the summer, but with the voice over IP project and the NRGIV project and time and attendance that we're currently working on, we might have to work some after hours to kind of get that done. So I think we might need that 10,000 for next year, especially because if it's a major project, it's going to eat up quite a bit of overtime. Yeah, I mean, the phone system, we might, depending on what we do it, I don't see that project starting anytime, probably before June or July, getting it implemented. If we have our meeting on the March 3rd to host the vendors in, take a few weeks to make a decision, let's call it April 1, make a decision to the vendors and have them essentially be awarded that project on April 1st, turn it around and start planning. You're probably looking at June 1st. Yes. Yeah, the Board of Ed has their own staff for that, and yeah, it would be due, right. They would manage their project. We would manage our side.
There was that one issue this morning that you raised, whether or not emergency management had sufficient amount
Yeah, that was what I just mentioned.
in the account.
Yeah, emergency management has. Emergency management has a few analog lines to the EOC that calls in, so I think there's 4 or 5 lines that roll over to one another. So that's what Deputy Chief Kirby was including in his budget, and I guess there's also they have maybe a cell phone or two.
Okay.
In addition.
All right. So, I guess all I can say to you is we need the most updated information on costs and which way you go before we budget. If it isn't fixed before we vote, it ain't getting fixed for the next year.
And what date is that?
We are voting on March the 16th.
Okay. Yeah, so we should hopefully have better idea of the number, and as soon as I get it, Vin's been included on a lot of the emails, and I'll make sure that I get that to you as well.
But we're going to need that and an understanding of what's left in each department's telephone account, so we know what numbers we're changing. Because after that, the only option is supplemental, and we consider that a dirty word.
Yeah, understand.
Yes, please.
I heard Vin mention something about the computers doing more of a program like the Board of Ed. Mm-hmm. Is that something you can look into before?
Sure, I can.
If that would affect the number at all, just so we know exactly what we're.
Yeah, I can. I can call a vendor or two and see what their proposed price would be.
All right, thank you.
And as a follow-up to that, is there a general rule about how long you want to keep computers here? I mean, I'm figure out to understand this. It seems like the actual desktops don't have a lot to do.
Right.
They're not heavy in terms of storing programs. Obviously, I'm looking at both of you because we know I'm out of my element here. But do they need to be replaced that often where they're not quite dumb terminals, but they kind of are? So do we always need the latest and greatest? And I know in the past we've let the town side get way too far behind. But, you were talking about the years of these computers. And are they, really that old? 2000 and, what do we have? 2012 and 2013?
Right. I guess to that point, yes, they are not very heavy in terms of what their use is. I'm trying to get ahead of the curve rather than having, if we wait a few more years, having computers that are now 6 or 7 years old and having 300 of them to replace at once. I'm trying to get ahead of that. That way we're doing some every year rather than all at once.
How many computers do we have on the town side?
There's about 250 workstations that we manage and operate.
I guess part of me wonders, unless the operating system gets zapped by Microsoft and is no longer supported, and obviously you know more about it, so disagree with me.
No, I think the issue that you want is a little more current. It's not so much the operating system as much as it is the applications you run. If you go out and do this energy serve, or you do some of these other things that are out there, they're basically resource-hungry applications today. Just like your cell phones are being turned over very often. I have an iPhone 5, and I can tell you some things don't run there as well as they do on an iPhone 7. And the iPhone 5 is not that old. It's only a couple of years old. So you have the same issue with the desktops. Where you start to buy enhanced software where you want functionality, you're going to find that the stuff is not going to run well. Could you live with it? Yeah, I guess you can. But you're going to have people getting a lot of aggravation that the thing doesn't run well, or he's going to wind up with more support issues because the thing won't have enough memory or won't have enough storage to run the application. So you want to stay kind of current. I mean, 5 years is a lot, I think. But, 3 years is probably recommended. But, if you had to go 4 years, 4 years is okay. But you got to get into something and I think we said this before today, you can't let it just go and just run it off, because it's going to be to the detriment of the operations.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking of it that way, because I know at the Board of Ed they're always getting new programs and they're trying new things, and I guess I'm kind of thinking in my office we don't really change the programs, we operate off the same, but whereas you're getting new applications constantly or frequently.
Well, they're upgraded versions of the operating systems, like the servers. Like each department really has their own operating system software that they use. Like the town clerk has their database program, the assessors have their database program, obviously Munis in the finance department. So everybody has their own thing, and those things are being updated on a regular basis.
Okay. So then, to follow up with Scott's question, then get us some kind of a number on what becomes a better program.
Can do. Thank you.
And maybe something that staggers your 250 over 2 years or 3 years, so there's always a constant same number every year being replaced.
Yeah, I can look into that. Workstations?
Yeah.
There are not a lot of workstations that are sitting around unused. So that goes with employees. There are actually more employees that don't have workstations out there too that could probably use some, but yeah, that's about what we need.
Sorry, last question.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned laptops for training and for taking of the subservice exam. Do we need the same type of laptop or computer that we get for the rest of the area, or could use like a Chromebook or something a little less if it's being not used as a designated workstation, but more as a resource area?
Yeah, certainly as a resource area, Chromebooks might work. I think what they were looking to do is to have their testing software on it, and then obviously we would use it for trainings like the Energov training or Munis training when people need to learn how to do something, or we do a webinar with the company. They always like to have people with workstations follow along and do it themselves. That way, they're doing and learning at the same time.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Bill. I think we've left you with enough assignments.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the town clerk and vital statistics. Sue? We're on page 103 first. Good afternoon. So something just came up in probate that, if you mind, I just have a quick question first. When you scan and digitize all your records, you're still required to keep those same records anyway and hard copy. And are you required to keep them on site?
We, after so many years, the older ones can be moved off-site, but it's quite an expense.
Right. Okay, so we keep everything here then.
Everything except what we have at Iron Mountain, which they store our microfilm, things like that. We have some large books, the old-fashioned ones that we've reduced to 8.5 by 11 size. And those are, right now down in the basement. We have to get permission, now that we have the big books, which we'd have 9 in a place where we can probably put about 35 of the smaller books. We have to get permission to put into Iron Mountain, the cost is.
Yeah, it's not
We
cheap.
haven't done anything because the cost is really exorbitant. And, we're hoping this year to do a few more rows of those books. So every time you do one of those books, they have to be triple and quadruple proofed. Because they used to, record differently than they do now. If there was a half a page left, they put some of this document on that half page.
Okay, thank you. So now it's you. All right,
I will use the mic.
you have to call, yeah, you
It's on? Okay. Okay, I guess. Okay.
like to point out to us this year?
Pretty straightforward. I think some of the things that we have gotten changes in would be costs of different things. We have used up all of our overtime this year. And we usually do a Saturday in April for fishing season. And also in June for dog licensing, and I don't think we will this year because we don't have the funds for it. It's just that the elections took up quite a bit of
That time.
time, and we did utilize a lot of Saturdays. It was requested on and on and on, so we did that. We've had a couple of raises in our professional account. I think it was the dues, only because they have gone up finally. We don't know exactly what they are going to be, but I'm pretty certain they're going to go up again. And we just had, and we did not have this in here, so we'll probably do a supplemental. COT has told us, which is our recording system that we utilize, we're not in compliance with our contract with the number of stations that we are using for search. So we have to purchase 2 more search stations for our area. And then we need to tell the assessor and the tax collector's office they can't use ours any longer. They have to buy their own seats for that, so that they will be able to utilize the COT system to do land record searches.
Okay, let me understand. What you just said was we have to buy 2 we don't need and
No.
put 2 in an area where we do need.
No, we have to buy 2. We have 3 search terminals in my office.
Okay,
Only 1 is by contract. We never knew that until about a week ago. We were told that we are not in compliance with the contract that we're under. We have 3 seats in my office for full resolution 3, which is the system that we use.
and you're required only to have 1.
And then, then we only have 1 search terminal with that. Now, we have 3 search terminals for the public, and sometimes there's a line waiting. So we're not in compliance with those other 2 search terminals.
I'm sorry, I'm going to continue to sound stupid.
Okay?
But they gave us the terminals. Or
No.
They're not connected to, we can use any computer.
They're on
So we
they're on
created
an
our own.
internet
basis. The search terminals are on internet. The reason we need them attached to COT is people use those to copy the deeds that they need, the title searchers or the attorneys, or sometimes the general public comes in and they need a Schedule A, your property description, from their deeds. That's what those search terminals are used for.
So,
And we have 3 in my office in the little ante area. Only one of them is contractually what we have. We've been using
okay, so
3.
we've added 2 that,
We
that
added
we're not
2.
paying them for.
Yeah, and we
Got
have, they're looking into the cost. They're not going to back charge us. They're just going to tell us what the cost will be and when we'll have to have it. I really don't want them to shut those down.
Right.
'Cause that would be a
Now I
problem.
understand. And then you're saying that the assessor will have to have 1 or
They're
2,
gonna
whatever
have-
they need,
Yeah.
maybe 1.
Probably 1, and the tax collector 1.
And when they use, so those are not used by the public. Those are just used
Used
by
by
the
them.
department.
Mm-hmm.
The ones in your office that are used by the public, is there a fee for using those?
They pay for each page. They pay $1 a page to print anything.
To you, not to COT.
To our office, right? We do not have. Trying to think. COT offers where you can look at it at home, and then they take and you put a credit card and you pay for 100 copies, and then they know when 100 copies have been printed and they pay us. But I don't know if we're going to do that. If we do anything with e-searches and stuff like that, then it creates other problems in the office. We don't have a lot of space. So if I need to have a search place that's just for e-recordings, or I need to have someone phoning in different stuff just on one terminal, I don't have the space for that. There's no place to fit it. I mean, the only extra space we have in our office, which is another station, is our scanning area to scan our documents in and send them into COT so that they will be in our books and then on file. Anybody can go at home and do a search of the land records. They just see the index. They don't see the actual document. They have to come in for that.
And there's no way they can see it from home and interface directly with COT and pay COT?
They could, but we still have to have the search terminals for them to do that, and the ability to do that would cost more because it's another phase that you'd add to your contracts.
Okay, and at what point do you think they will let you know the cost that the added cost this will be?
We've been working with them now for a week and a half, 2 weeks, and I thought it would be something they'd come back and say it's $500 for the seat. The seat is good for the year. I mean, but they haven't.
Okay.
And we've been in contact with them back and forth. They just haven't done it. I mean, frankly, if we don't get it here, we'll either take it out of historical funds or something like that. It's if I had to go for a supplemental, it would be as the last ditch.
Okay, thank you. Go on.
Everything else is pretty well the same. I don't know if anybody sees something they want to ask a question on.
Excuse me. Any questions on town clerk?
Yes.
How many homes are in foreclosure?
We got 8 in the last week and a half, but they're not always new. I mean, we had 3 brand new ones in the last 2 weeks. But one of those was sold in August, and now it's in foreclosure again. So. But it's well into the 400s.
In August? And it's in foreclosure since August? Again?
Well, I'll say August of 15, not August of 16.
Oh,
so
okay.
they had a year and a half.
Okay. Wow.
I know.
Okay. Any other questions on town clerk? Okay, if none, then vital statistics is on 273.
Mhm. Again, this is pretty straightforward, and the fees and all are fees that towns pay one another. If you have certain number of documents, mainly it's the large cities, then you pay for the documents that come in.
So we have $1,150 that we just trade back and forth.
Yeah, basically, you know, and sometimes you don't get paid for them if they're under a certain number anymore. We don't trade checks anymore. It's usually the smaller towns. The larger towns, New Haven, Bridgeport, Danbury, usually hospital towns are where you're getting things back and forth, death certificates, and so on. Marriage licenses, there's a few. I mean, we get more marriage licenses in town, people getting married from someplace else that we send out because of the Marriott in Tashua Knolls.
Right, because they have to get it from the town they're
In
getting
which
married
you're
in.
getting married, yes. Yeah, it's like Monroe now. Monroe does more than they used to because of
they have
Waterview.
the Waterview, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Was that a good or bad idea when they changed it?
It's better for us because we know where it's coming from. Every once in a while right now we'll get someone who gets the license in Bridgeport, gets married in Trumbull, the JP or the minister will sign it, and they'll just cross out and say Trumbull.
It doesn't. Does
You
that
know,
mean they're not married?
No, I mean, the state refuses to say behavior has consequences, but you are married, but it just creates a problem for us because it has to be indexed differently in the book. We have to make sure it's sent to the other town and so on. We send marriage license when it comes back to the town which both people lived in, as well as where it was performed. So if it's performed here, we keep a copy. And if it's done someplace else, they send us a copy.
If
they
the
lived
person
in
was a
Trumbull.
Trumbull resident.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. We've just had a couple that came in. They needed to get married because they were married down in the islands and they don't remember where.
That was one hell of a party.
You know, it was a destination wedding. They don't remember where. They don't have a copy of their marriage license.
That is almost beyond
But
believable.
we can't give them a marriage license because they're already married. So we told them to try to find out the name of the resort, because if the resort is the one that put the wedding together, I mean,
Don't they have bills?
I don't know.
Plane tickets? Somebody take a picture. You know, there are days I think that
Our suggestion to people that like destination weddings, and if anyone here is doing one, get married here by a JP before you go down there, and then just do it there. It just makes it easier for your life later on.
yeah, for records,
Yes.
record keeping.
Yes, yes. But they did try. The state, the state has tried in Vitals to put the death certificates online so that we could get them. Right now, a birth certificate, we can get any child born in the state of Connecticut from 2002 here. So if, let's say you lived in Avon when your child was born, but you've moved down this way now, you could come here, and if the child was born from 2002 on, you could get the birth certificate here. You don't have to travel all over the state to do it. But they can't get the doctors to cooperate with a sign-off. So we all went for training, but we're not doing that right now. But this was, it's not like the system that they gave us for the births is easy. We have two completely different systems because they decided to switch a year ago. And neither works the same. But we can get birth certificates from 2002.
But you only have death certificates for people who died,
died
in town or
if
were
they
residents?
lived in town or they died in town. So, yeah, a lot of them are at the hospitals, unless they pass at home. A lot of them are at the hospitals, and then we just have to wait for them to be sent to us.
But if the hospitals are set up to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But so what's the issue with the doctors if someone dies at home? They still have to sign. Someone has to sign a death certificate.
Right, but we're having a problem with them being signed in a timely manner for the state through this program that they wanted to put in. It was not an easy program to use. I mean, we went for the training, and I came out confused. I think other people did also. But I don't know if that's going to come to fruition right away at all.
Okay.
But at least the births, I mean, we can help people out. They don't have to travel all over.
I gotta say, it's much help. I came here for my kids. It's much easier than just going to Bridgeport. It's just paying the parking and get in there.
Yeah. The hard part would be if you had a child born in 2001.
Yeah.
And one in 2004. That 2001 is a problem.
Okay. Any other questions on vital statistics? If not, thank you very much, as always.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is treasurer and then town attorneys. We are actually slightly ahead, so why don't we take a couple of minute break? We'll break for a little while, move, stretch, whatever. More coffee? I'm done. I had my second cup. That's it.
Yeah. No, I didn't. For some reason, my narrative didn't make it into the book, at least not into one of the councilwoman's book. Yeah. But it's pretty much the same as last year, so it's not a big deal. The only thing I was wondering, actually, at our last meeting, Mr. Chase brought up an interesting point about the revenue being booked as revenue because we're not actually drawing it out, we're not actually spending it. It's supposed to be accruing, causing an accretion in the value. And with the changes in rates and things, those values are fluctuating. I don't know that that's something we need to do right here as far as, but it is an interesting question that he raised, and I've been thinking about it. I'm not quite sure how you guys want to treat it, but I don't think we can do that in the minute we have here. It's something I think the board needs to think about on a broader scale. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think he was correct when he pointed out that we're not really using it in the first place. And second of all, if we do reinvest it, which we have been over years, it's not true. Well, not only is it not true in the town, but as the value of the underlying assets fluctuate based on whatever they fluctuate. Of course, we get the money back because they're all guaranteed by the government, as we discussed. But well, exactly. Yeah, I just thought I mean, we haven't had a meeting since then. We haven't really had a chance to talk about it, so it's something maybe you guys should discuss when you decide how to treat it. But I'm gonna try to make the revenue. Obviously, I'm gonna invest the money as well as I can. But it does raise an interesting issue. Some of the revenue, though, does go right back in. Like the money we make from the TD investment account that we've talked about.
Right.
That money, of course, goes right back in because it's in the account, and we use that money for our base. But the investments, those three investment accounts we have, the Infinex account, which is the CDs, and then the two bond accounts, Morgan and Janie, that really doesn't get brought back into the town. So there might, when you do your revenue, I know this isn't really my budget, so
No, it's okay. If I understand correctly, and Ted's raised a lot of questions that have more to do with the underlying investments and his concern about their value and if we are tracking the interest off of it, which while you're right, we reinvest, we don't have to reinvest. We could choose to take that interest as the rest of the interest and use it in the budget. We don't do it that way, but I think it's more a question with the auditors. It's actually, we have generated it. I think his concern is if the underlying investment was losing its value, we were not misrepresenting or maybe misunderstanding what we really do have. Part of my thought, and he's raised this issue, Maria tried to find one actual bond and follow it through, one investment and follow it through to maturity to kind of address his concern, and she's looking at that now. I asked him that because we were in the middle of the budget, this might not be the time to get in depth to what he wanted, but as I thought about it a little more, I thought that perhaps a conversation or a meeting with those investment advisors or the people who run the fund that we deal with would better be able to address his question. His question has definitely exceeded my knowledge, so I am not comfortable addressing it. I think I now understand his question and his concern, and it took me a little bit to do that. Because as you had said, I always made an assumption it's a bond, it's guaranteed by the government, it's safe, we'll always get it. But we get it if we hold it to maturity. In between, its value is fluctuating. But do we care it's fluctuating if we hold it to maturity anyway, and in the end we get what we need? So,
Based on the statements that fund
so the
funds, not necessarily
bonds, so the underlying investment is fluctuating.
correct. Because like anything, this group, the pool has these bonds, let's say 10 of them, and they're sold, bought and sold. So you get locked in almost to the value that you sell them at, not for when you sell the fund. It's not like a CD.
Okay, so then the question becomes, is going into these investments, because they pay us greater interest, worth the underlying risk of not getting the initial payment back?
It depends on the market. This market's tough on bonds.
Yes.
There's a rising interest rate market, which therefore
Sometimes, yeah.
bonds themselves.
Well, the variable rate bonds should adjust. They take a few months, but they adjust.
Right.
And it's not a matter of risking the underlying capital. It's a matter of, because we get that back, that's guaranteed. But what's not guaranteed is if you sell the bond today, for example, you may go up.
So you couldn't liquidate today for what you had, but that's contradictory.
Some you could liquidate
Yes,
for more.
yeah,
I
yep.
mean, but that's not. I don't think the town of Trumbull. I certainly don't want to be, and I don't think the town of Trumbull wants to be in the speculation business.
No.
As far as saying we're going to buy bonds that we think are going to increase in value versus bonds that are going to give us a steady stream of return at a
Right.
higher rate. That two very different things. The payments are guaranteed. We're going to get the money back. That's not the issue. The issue is if we were to sell that bond right now, would
Right.
we make more or less money?
And we're
And
not,
sometimes we make more, sometimes we make less.
right, but we're not necessarily looking to sell it, but if I understand some of his argument, they're bond funds so that,
Bond funds fluctuate like any other mutual fund.
but the question is, if you held it to the maturity date,
A fund like
you're
that
saying
has
it's
a
still
maturity
not it's still not guaranteeing the underlying rate, the underlying amount.
held the bond until its expiration date. Then that
But it may not hold it.
because we don't control the fund.
So you're saying that on any given day, the true value of that investment varies.
Correct, because the fund manager, whoever that is in control of it. If you were looking for a fixed number, we are in some accounts that have just CDs. If you get a CD that's 1.5%, 1.25%, whatever it is,
Well,
then
not,
you'll get
Okay.
not quite that high.
I happened to walk by
Yeah,
people
yeah.
yesterday that had 1.25%. That's why it was stuck in my head. I haven't
Yeah.
done any shopping, believe me. And believe me, there is
Yeah,
a much
the longer
smaller
ones.
number than
Yeah, if we get CDs that are several years,
Right.
they get up that high. But even the institutional investing, if you're getting a year CD, which, well, I mean, they're up to 0.8, 0.9, but those are we try to keep it under a year. If we were going to go out 4 or 5, I mean, if we wanted to get a 10-year T-bill, I think they're selling it 2 something, right? It's 2.5, 2.15, but whatever they are. But we're not doing 10-year tied up investments.
But
really, my point was more to bring up. I just wanted to follow up on the conversation that we had last meeting. How you book the revenue is going to be I think an interesting discussion, and what you count towards it is something I think the board should look at. And I'm happy. I mean, I know you guys are in the process. I don't know how your process works, so I don't want to give you homework to do. But at some point, maybe not this budget, maybe next budget season, maybe when we've ruminated on for a while and we've talked about it and over a few meetings and offline, we should think about how we book the revenue and whether that should be included as revenue the way we've been taking it, just like taxes are or fees. Because if we're not actually getting the revenue, then we are.
Well, we're getting
accounting
it.
for something
We're
not-
getting it. We're just not
Just not
choosing
using
to
it.
use it.
Right.
Doesn't eliminate the fact we get that revenue. It's just instead of pulling it out and using it for expenditures, we let it sit where it gets reinvested.
And we could start doing that. I mean,
We-
instead of reinvesting it,
We'd pull it out, and then we'd be
just pull
investing
it
it
out.
anyway because we'd stick
We'd
it
have to
over
put
in the
other
TD
money.
account and put other money there.
Yeah.
So it's not so much, and you're maybe in a better position to explain Ted's position. It wasn't the concern over the revenue. The revenue you outlined for us, we know what we make. How we choose to then use the revenue, although technically it's set to to balance out our budget, our revenues.
Right.
If we don't exactly use those dollars, but we're using some other dollars that are currently coming in and not yet invested, it doesn't really matter. From a purely accounting standpoint, we've made that revenue line.
Right.
The question I think that he raises is if, in fact, the underlying investment is putting the principal at risk because the principal value is floating, and as you say, we don't have a maturity date to hold it to. We've just given them money. If we wanted to liquidate it, whatever the notice we have, I'm sure it can't be liquidated tomorrow, but there's some window in which we could get it back. Ted's point is what we put in there is not necessarily what we get back. It could be more. It could be less.
Well, I'm not sure what Ted's point was. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's what he said, and that's why I was hoping he was here. But whatever Ted's point was, I think what sparked my interest in it was how you book the revenue. I hadn't thought about that before because I'm not on your side of the table as far as.
I don't think his concern was how we book the revenue.
No, I'm not saying it was. I'm saying that what he said.
Right. His issue is the loss of value in the three funds that we're investing in. If there's a potential, while they were originally selected and they've been maintained because clearly the interest they pay us is better.
Yes.
But if in fact the underlying investment is losing more value than we're getting, than the interest differential between the very set ones, then it's not worth it to put it at risk. That was the question he raised. I personally never looked at it that way before because I was always under the impression that those were bonds that had, if we held to maturity, we were guaranteed that amount.
That's correct.
But there is no maturity. What's the maturity on the Janey fund or the?
I mean, they're all different. It depends on the actual. It depends on the actual bond. They don't all have.
But some can be called.
Well, so
Some of them were Fannie Mae in them. And if I prepay my mortgage, it's paid off. Some of that bond isn't there.
Then we get that money immediately. We don't even wait for it.
It's a Fannie Mae bond fund. So there's a pool of mortgages held by Fannie Mae
Right.
Okay?
that are in this bond fund. Houses or mortgages, underlying securities are held in there. They're bought, they're sold, they're refinanced. Things are moving in and out, which is why that rate fluctuates, which is why you can't say that at the end of 10
Well,
years.
not in. They're not moving in. They're only moving out. So when we buy it, it's fixed. And then as people refinance or pay their mortgage, whatever money comes in from the payments, that money gets distributed. So it's not like it's a constantly moving target. We're buying new ones periodically, but we don't, the ones we own new ones don't come in.
So that's why Maria was trying to follow one $250,000 one from when we purchased it to when it was paid off.
Yeah,
I looked
but
at
that's,
some of the bank statements. The statements, there was like a principal payment out,
right.
like a, almost like a, I don't know, like an interest payment or, well, it says principal payment. So they pay out throughout, I'm not sure, I don't,
Yeah.
so I don't
Principal, it would depend on who's servicing the mortgage, because as a lender, you have a choice to retain servicing rights. So they'd still sell the underlying mortgage to Bank of America. Let's say Bank of America closed the mortgage. They retain servicing rights, so they get a portion. Before closing it, they sell the principal over to Fannie. Fannie gets that chunk, Bank of America would then get a smaller chunk, but they don't retain the debt on the loans. So monthly payments made, probably, usually in that case, too like Bank of America, they take their cut, they tell the rest of the pay back.
So is that part of the now losing the principal or losing?
Do you know how many are actually in an actual bond of these investments, are actually in an actual bond versus a bond fund? Because those are two different vehicles. of
Right, and that's,
I
So
sent you the
without
bank statements,
knowing
yeah.
what these investments are, because a bond fund, you'd have a realized or unrealized gain or loss. So I think
yes,
that's where we're talking
and that's what
about.
Ted's talking about.
That's what
because
Ted was
you're in a
talking about,
pool-
right.
You're in a pool now, you're like in a mutual fund, so you're in a pool of bonds, and a fund, a professional manager will buy
Yep.
and sell bonds
Yep,
as they see fit.
Well, but
But
also
you're
what
not
matters,
investing in one single bond, you're investing in shares in a mutual fund.
but well,
So
some
I'm
of,
not sure which type
right.
of investment we're discussing.
but
so
what's
without knowing-
causing the fluctuation is more for the fixed rate investments in a variable interest rate environment. You know, we've had flat interest rates for 10 years or more. Now that interest rates have actually moved and there's some indication or speculation, I guess, the Fed will move them again. Although now they're saying maybe they won't because different things happen. You know, everybody speculates. But the fact that the interest rates went up, the fixed rate investments especially that are paying, say, 2%, now you can buy a bond that pays 2.5% for the same price. You're not going to pay that price for the 2% one anymore because you can get more money for the same price. So that depresses the value of the 2% one. And that's what's going on. And then the variable ones we have take a while to reset. So as the new ones come out and they pay more, people aren't willing to buy the old ones until they reset, and then they start paying more interest.
Well, you're talking about a bond now.
Yeah, exactly.
Without knowing which type of investments we're discussing here, it's hard to.
we have both, and that's where Ted's concern was. Ted's concern was the underlying investment was a bond fund, and therefore our principal could move around.
Yes, if you
Yeah.
haven't realized or unrealized.
Right,
gain or
and
loss,
that's what he
there's
was
not
worried
numbers
about.
that you have to
Right.
track, that you have to record.
But that's not really a budget issue, right? That's something that
No,
that's a
you're right.
So
Absolutely.
what I'm addressing is when Ted said that, it got me thinking about the way we're doing this.
Yeah, but
And
not
so
now.
for budget issues, what I was suggesting is that how you book the revenue, how much revenue comes from different accounts, how much is going to be used in as revenue versus
Yep.
just a reinvestment. That's what I was bringing up, and I'm not sure. I know it's a lot to put on you right now, and I don't know if anyone's thought of this or if it's been germinating. Maybe again we don't do it this year, but it strikes me that if you are booking revenue on the Board of Finance, if the Board of Finance is booking the revenue that we are not actually using, which is from the 3 investment accounts, not the TD investment account, because that is all, we get that interest, that's money we get. But the other accounts, really because STIF too, maybe
Well,
Maria, STIF we really don't.
Stiff is,
No, but STIF we do get
Stiff
money
is-
back, because after, when we invest it for particular purposes, when we do take it out for those purposes,
right.
more money has accumulated on that.
But that's
So
only,
that
but
might actually be revenue.
But
That's
the
a little
other,
different
the
as
only
well.
difference in what you're saying is they just have to be instructed in the investment accounts to send us the money instead of leaving it there.
Well, if you want to book it as revenue, yes.
If I, well, so, but, yes.
Okay.
And I'm not concerned that we're booking it as revenue and choosing not to use it. because the fact of the matter is we still do have the revenue. So from a strictly budget standpoint right now, when we're setting a budget and we're setting revenues, I don't have a problem continuing to do what we do. That we choose not to take it out of that fund is irrelevant, because if tomorrow morning Maria said we need that interest, then every time the interest was paid monthly, they could send her a check, wire her money, do whatever. So we do have access to it. Whether the practice is to choose not to use it doesn't change the fact it's interest and we're counting it as revenue. The issue that Ted has raised, I think we need to discuss as a separate issue, partially, and I'm not even saying we're doing anything wrong, we'll do anything different, but it was more to raise the awareness of the people on the board to understand if in fact there is a risk in doing what we're doing. Then at least I at least in this tenure on the board assumed there was no risk in any of that. We said we put in $4 million, tomorrow we could get $4 million. Granted, maybe not tomorrow, it might take a little while to process it, but we had access to it. If in fact I'm counting on 4, and my risk is whatever, it could be only 3.7, we need to understand that. And now there is enough, I don't want to say confusion, but lack of education on some of us, the members of this board, that I want to clarify that for everybody. So whatever we do, we understand completely. Ted and Scott have a better handle on this. The rest of us, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking for everybody, would like a little better explanation. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with what we're doing. It's only understanding it. And that I think we can do that when we're done the budget. I've asked Ted that we have this conversation after the budget, perhaps meeting with the investment people to get a better understanding. Maria, as I said, is trying to follow that one fund through, and maybe we will change nothing, we just have an understanding of it. So it wasn't, I certainly thought it was all guaranteed. I was thinking of it as a bond. I buy this bond, if I hold it long enough, I get it back. It's a bond fund. I do understand that's different. I didn't understand completely that's what we were holding. I don't know what we would change once we decide that. Would we stop doing it because there's too much of a swing? I don't know that the swing is that great, but it's maybe something we all want to, understand.
I don't even know as a municipality what we can or can't. I'm sure there's some kind of regulation.
Very limited.
Oh, yeah.
Very limited.
They're all, but that's the reason they're all backed. They're all backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. Otherwise, we could not invest in it. So you're right when we say we put in $4 million, we're going to get that money back. It's not going to be that we can just sell it tomorrow necessarily.
How much money do we have in a bond fund?
We have the monthly boat report,
Whatever the.
I'm just interested in that.
4 or 5 million?
No, more than that.
Is it more than that?
It's both Janie and
Infinix?
no, Infinix is the CDs.
Okay.
It's both Janie and Morgan Stanley, so
Okay.
it's 8 million and a half, 9 million.
Okay.
Whatever.
Yeah, like you said, there was no giant red flag that said, oh my God, let's do something. It's just, first let's understand it.
I'm with you, let's understand it, but if we're running, let's say, with interest in lots of, the balance, or a net zero, why are we holding $10 million? Is almost where I stand.
But,
Okay.
and again, the issue is for budgeting, I disagree a little with you on the fact that if we're not going to use the money, then you should be booking it as revenue. But again, that's for you guys to decide. If I'm trying to pay my household bills and I've got investments and I say, well, great, I make, $10 as a lawyer and then my investments bring in another $5. And so I can afford a house where my mortgage is $15, if I'm just going to be reinvesting that, I'm going to be short because I only have the $10. So that's the issue I'm raising. Now, whether my investments go up or down, or the things Ted raised, Mr. Chase raised, I think he's right, and I think we do need to look at that. But what I'm suggesting is that the revenue you're booking, if we're not going to use it, if that's the way we've been doing things, and that's the way we're going to keep doing things, that's fine. I'm just bringing it to your attention.
Right, but it's
So
still,
that's
it's still
my point.
revenue. If I have,
It is
as you
revenue.
say, my income,
But we gotta withdraw it, which we haven't been doing.
well, but no, I don't have to withdraw it, because if I make $10 a year, and my savings account makes me $5 a year, from the IRS standpoint, I just made $15,000 a year. I'm gonna pay taxes on it anyway. I may choose not to use it, but it's still income, and it's still income we've made. And it's still, for our function, is balancing a budget. If you,
At the end of the year, we can use it if we had to.
we could use it if we had to,
But then how do you set the mill rate?
allowing that income is coming in.
Okay, but then we're gonna be, then we have to be taking it out.
Yeah, we're using
Yeah.
it, but we're using it, we're counting it, and in theory, we're using it. We may not physically move the money out of that, because if every month we move the money out of the investment account into the general fund, then you'd have a bigger pile in the general fund, and you'd only be circling it around and reinvesting it. So,
Well, maybe, right, that's.
but what else would you be doing? Is sitting in the general account? If we trigger the point where the fund balance isn't enough, we all better go out and find a building to jump off of. Because that's 16 and something $million, so, but, okay. So I assume there are no questions on the actual budget.
No, the salary,
Yeah, okay. Then I think we're good.
great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have another break. We should have them here any minute, but we do have 5 minutes. So we won't keep the camera running for 5 minutes. We'll adjourn for a few minutes. All right, we'll come back to order. Next item on the agenda is Town Attorneys, page 87.
Oh, here he is.
Okay, here we are. Oh, yeah. Okay. Good afternoon. All right, you're on. Look, have you seen the changes that Tim made?
Some,
Okay.
not all. As far as the general retainer is concerned, which is the bulk of any legal budget, it's unchanged. For the most part, it's obviously split between, not split, but it's portion between our office and Coleman and Wolf. Same schedule of services, anything that's pertaining to the attached addendum to our retainer agreement, are within the not to exceed price. So if it's over, it's over, if it's under, it's under. We've done it that way for the last 7 years. It's worked out for the town. First selectman is like that flexibility, so we've maintained what he's asked. So, from that standpoint, it's relatively unchanged budget. Last year there was some issues. We had some allocations in the tax assessor's budget for tax appeals. I know that the 12 that my office was handling, 11 of them have been resolved, so we were down to 1. That one may end up in litigation, but we don't know yet. We'll see how it goes. But that's something that's outside of this retainer agreement, so I'm trying to speak of things which maybe in other budgets that we may come up with. I know that Attorney Marino handles some things for the zoning department. If there's a litigation that comes up that's of larger consequences, I know it's something that's outside the retainer. The WPCA, there's the in-kind services. I think when you look at the WPCA's budget, if you've done so already.
We have not done that yet.
Yeah, the professional services account in that budget has gone down significantly, just because of the fact that we've been able to resolve the outstanding issues with WPCA. There's one issue that's still litigation, but it's not as significant as what we've been dealing with in the past, so that's gone down substantially. So from that standpoint, it's relatively unchanged budget, same scope of services, same same type of services we provide to the towns at a not to exceed price, and we're still providing our invoices to the town on a monthly basis, so the people in town hall can look and see what time is spent correct, and we'll
Okay.
continue to do that as well.
All right. Questions by board members?
What two contractors are you, says here, prepare proceedings against two contractors? What's that about?
Proceeding against two contractors.
I think it's tax appeals revaluation. It says conduct depositions, discovery to prepare for the proceedings against two contractors. The tax assessor was here this morning and said there was one going to trial.
Yeah, so there's one going to trial, that's not being handled by our office. It was a carryover, Virgin Morris and Devlin's office is handling that matter, and that is most certainly gonna be going to litigation, from what I'm told. I'm getting updates and ask for updates from, their office, usually on a monthly basis, not sometimes nothing happens in a month. So I know that's one of them, and we are anticipating that there may be another one, as far as tax appeals are concerned. With them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's two, there's, digital, which is the data center, which is most definitely gonna be going to trial, and then there's the mall, which is something that potentially could go to trial.
Okay.
Well, we've seen some pretty good progress in the ones that my office has been handling. Like I said, there was 12 of them. We tried to split them between my office and Goldenwolf's office. I think they've been able to resolve a lion's share of theirs as well. But I can report that from our standpoint, 11 out of 12 have been resolved.
Okay. And then the second section, the only other item, there's any costs, it's the fees and ancillary services, has to do with something for the Ethics Commission. Administrative procedures in order to enforce responsible contractor ordinance. There will be a requirement that the town conduct an administrative hearing that will require a hearing officer.
Yes, so now that there's a responsible contractors ordinance, the ordinance would require there to be a hearing officer to allow that contractor to come and appeal that decision. That's been put into the budget for the legal fees for the town. But there would have to be a hearing officer, and if I would assume that hearing officer is going to need some guidance from the town attorney's office, or independent counsel, depending on the way in which the proceedings occur. Because there is a portion of that ordinance that there would be a recommendation of the town attorney to potentially debar someone. If that's the case, then I would assume that if it goes into litigation, that outside counsel will be handling it just for conflict of interest.
Okay. And then some affordable housing appeals.
Yes, yeah, and that goes to the zoning issues. There is a potential of a affordable housing application coming in. We are trying to just make sure that we budget accordingly for that. And that would be handled by Attorney Marino at Cohen and Wolf's office, who handles the work for zoning board.
Yeah, actually, I thought there were three. I know one has been withdrawn.
Yeah,
I'm sure that one will come back.
Yeah, yeah. So there's been some that are there, so there's a little bit of a concern, so we're making sure that we budget accordingly in the event that we have to go to defend any appeals.
Let me ask you a question. If the General Assembly finally sees fit to make amendments to that legislation, what happens to pending applications? Are they subject to the old rules or the new rules?
It depends on how the legislation is written. I mean, I don't know if it's gonna be retroactive, pending. I mean, the legislature can.
They can
determine-
address that.
Yeah, so we'll have to look at what comes down, review it, and then apply it to the application accordingly.
Yeah, I know there's a hearing of that committee in Hartford tomorrow. Affordable housing. They're looking at making some amendments to the statute.
Yeah, so we'll just see what they end up adopting, and then see if it's gonna be applicable to the current applications. They may draft some language to carve it out, we don't know.
Okay. I wasn't sure how that would work. Okay, questions for the town attorneys? Anything you think we should be concerned about from a financial standpoint?
No, I mean, the larger litigations that we've been handling, thankfully the last couple of years they've been resolved, which has been a plus. There's always issues that come up with the town. That's why we do the flat fee type of situation. Allows the staff to be able to pick up the phone, or first selectmen or boards and commissions to call us without the fear of getting result with an unanticipated bill. It's worked well in the past. We'll continue it until we're select conceive otherwise. And, it's worked out well.
All right. Any questions from anyone? Okay. But it took you longer to get here than it took you to explain it all to us. But that could be good. It's not necessarily a bad thing. All right. Library. Maybe we can, Good timing. See, we're actually running a little ahead, and you're arriving in perfect time. Okay, library is page 331, which is section 7, the very beginning of it. See, somehow we went from an hour behind to on time. This day has possibilities. And just a few housekeeping. Welcome, gentlemen. We'll give you a second to get settled. Good to see you, and welcome to your first board meeting.
This is the
First budget meeting.
First budget meeting, yes.
Yes. All right. So generally what we like to do is see if there's anything going on that you want to bring to our attention, good, bad, otherwise, activities, and then we can get into specifics of the numbers you're asking for.
All right. Should I use the microphone?
Yes, please. This way they'll be able to record you and hear you.
Thank you for having me. As you might already know, my name is Stefan Lynn Nielsen. I'm the new library director for the town of Trumbull. And well, we're here to talk about the budget, but before that, I'd also like to tell you that we have our One Book, One Town events coming up in March, and we're very excited about those. Includes everything from a debate between the St. Joseph High School and Trumbull High School debate teams, and it will be judged by the Yale Debate Club, which, as I understand, one of the top ones in the world, and in the United States, for that matter. And in addition to that, we are also doing a trip to the to the FDR Presidential Library, and several book programs, author programs, and movies even that we're looking forward to.
And what's the book?
The book is Presidential Courage by Michael Beschloss. So to start, we have had a very successful year. One of the more important statistics is that Trumbull is actually a very active reading community. Books and periodicals account for 82% of checkouts, which is quite unheard of in that amount. Most municipalities that I have researched or looked into, it's closer to about 50% DVDs or more even. So it's something to be proud of in that regard. In addition to that, we are a very well-used library system in comparison to just how many people are in the town, with 240,000 annual visits, which averages about 6.6 per person in town, in addition to about 444,000 items checked out. This is a really large number, and something that we should all be proud of. The goals and objectives from last year have mostly been met. Obviously, some things like the annual One Book, One Town program is what we're having in progress now, so we're not at all done with that. Some of the other items that we have completed, however, include increasing the educational offerings at the Creators Corner, which is a makerspace at our Fairchild branch. A makerspace is a technological hub where you can do everything from interact with a 3D printer to a variety of educational experiences with robots. These are sort of STEM activities that are designed to increase our patrons' awareness of what is capable in technology nowadays, and also draw them into the library to engage with other literary resources. In addition to that, we've increased our presence in the community by having the business librarian involved with the chamber activities, and increase our programming that's directed towards the business community. We are in the process of having our library being reviewed by various designers, and they're going to be providing us with potential RFPs in the near future for taking a look at creating meeting room spaces in our main library that will address certain needs such as study rooms, in addition to providing access to technology and local history resources that right now are just kind of swamped in together with all the rest of our offerings. So we're very excited about those things. Finally, in addition to those things, we're currently working on a floor plan modifications. In this case, reallocating our reference collection and our current layout of our collection to make it more accessible to the public. We want to make sure that our patrons are able to access information in the most logical manner, in addition to having enough open space to accommodate people who want to come in to study, people who want to come in to communicate and work on their various different projects, and hopefully by the end of March we will have a much better allocation to make that into a workable area for them. As far as the goals and objectives for the next year are concerned, chief among them, of course, is continuing our annual One Book, One Town program. We are going to review, plan, and begin formal procedure to do the improvements based on our architect that will be coming in. We would like to modify an existing vacant position into a new programming support position. This has to do with we recently had a person who retired, and instead of simply filling their position, we're interested in trying to do something new, and in order to address the needs of the community now. One of the things that you'll find if you take a look at libraries like Westport or Greenwich or a number of the other ones along the coast is many of them are moving towards a very programming heavy base model, meaning that they're trying to drive interest in the community by providing more programs, and thereby also having a reflection of that in the type of staff that they have on hand. So this position would be available not to simply check out books, but rather they would be there to assist the professional librarians with putting together programs, putting together the publicity, contacting presenters, making sure that we have all the requisite preparations we need in order to have successful programs for the public. And if you've been looking at some of the programs that we've had in the recent past, this January alone we had 3 programs that hit over 100 people in attendance. So if there is a interest in doing these things, Trumbull definitely has it. In addition to that, we are interested in developing an emergency plan for the library system. This is something that the library system hasn't had in the near memory. Most people wouldn't know where to go if there was an emergency, or where the location is of some important facets for the buildings, such as how to turn off the water in case there's a flood. These types of plans are important simply because it provides for easier access to dealing with certain emergencies that come up even on a regular basis, and having it available to the staff would make it much easier for us to operate. Improve and expand employee training regimen by having at least 2 relevant training events. We are actually having one of those, one training event that we already have planned for next week, where we're having a customer service specialist. She actually develops coursework and has written a book on customer service for libraries in particular. She works at, her name's Hallie Keeler, and she works at 3 Rivers Community College. And we're excited about that. This is in keeping with the need to bring our library services up to a professional level, making sure that everybody is operating from the same set of rules. You know, a lot of them already have the heart in the right place. I will not say that any one of my staff members doesn't, you know, try very hard to deliver a good experience to the public, but we do need to make sure that we are doing so in a professional manner. In addition to that, assess collection and the view of patron usage, and redesign as necessary. So this has to do with our nonfiction collections, our reference collections, and other sort of book collections that are not being checked out as much as they have been in the past, and bringing that more in line with what the needs of the public are in current day. Purchase and replace public seating furniture at the main branch. The Fairchild branch has already done recent renovations that have addressed these issues, and therefore they're not at problem here. But the main branch has several different types of furniture throughout the building, some of which was purchased, as I understand, from a reseller of hotel furniture. And so it was old when we got it. And some of the materials are coming apart, fraying at the seams, or are just generally in disrepair. We would like to see something that is more uniform across the board, and that sits comfortably while also not being prone to break. Evaluate patron usage of existing online resources and renegotiate vendor agreements if savings are viable. So this is something that we're already working towards. There's potential savings to be made in that regard with some of our vendors' resources. As I understand, with one of our vendors that we've already spoken to, we were paying list price for their resource, which is actually quite unheard of in the library world, and we should be able to negotiate those down to something that is favorable to us and allows us more flexibility in trying to get other resources available online. Some of the kind of online databases that I'm talking about are for instance, a database called Reference USA, which essentially gives us access to all the telephone books in North America and Canada, as well as all sorts of publicly listed information regarding a particular property, for instance. These types of resources are really good for people who might be doing business research, or people who are trying to find someone and perhaps you only know the person's last name and the small town in Philadelphia that they live in. Well, that's the type of resource that you could use in order to find it. So these online databases can provide real value for the public, and so it's important that we keep them, but we should also do so in a way that is in keeping with the best fiscal responsibility for our patrons. Finally, pursue fiber optic upgrade feasibility. This is in cooperation with the IT department. The state offers a program where they are enabling us to find discounted rates for fiber optic upgrades to our buildings. Right now, we already receive our wireless internet through the library from them. And this is through CEN, which I don't remember what that stands for. Lewis doesn't either. So CEN offers the ability to upgrade to fiber optics. The good thing about this would be from the IT department perspective that it would enable us to separate our patron internet access from our staff internet access, in which case it provides added security, in addition to also increasing the bandwidth for the patrons to access online. In turn, it would also allow us to do more things with technology in the library. For instance, we would be able to perhaps upgrade one of our rooms to become a teleconferencing room, which would certainly be of interest to perhaps small companies that are trying to hire someone from outside of the Trumbull area, allowing them to do a Skype interview, for instance. And there's other different types of utilities that could be used there. So does anybody have any questions?
Okay, so hearing no questions, let's go into the body of the budget. First of all, your One Town, One Book, do you have the flyers for that? Usually you bring us over some information on that, or is it online at your website?
It is online at the website, but and I forgot to bring any flyers with me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't realize that was one of the things that Sue had done.
Well, no, my question is, when we do something like that, obviously you have a limited to the number of books you can have available.
Mm-hmm.
So you have so many hard copy in the library, and do you have any online copies available? And assuming that would be nowhere near the number we need, what other things do people do to get access to them? Just then assume after that purchase them.
So we do purchase. How many do we purchase for? 50 physical copies, and then how many? Right. So we do have access for both digital and physical copies for the public. Unfortunately, once we start putting these out, it never seems like we purchase enough. The second that we get one returned, it automatically goes out the door. So our display constantly looks empty. But on positive end, a lot of people are reading the book.
How many roughly when you do this?
I would say a couple of hundred at least.
Okay. Okay. First, and actually only question I have has to do with the salaries. You requested an amount, the first selectman changed it. Maria, it says any increases are due to union contracts and steps. But when I look at the list, there was a position removed. Yeah, but a full-time position paying $50,000 a year replaced by a part-time position paying $12 isn't exactly even half-time replacing that position.
It's one of the same positions that we have, circulation technician position. It's less hours.
Well, it's a lot less. It's not. It's half the hours, but it's way less than half the pay. Okay. I guess there's no question in that for you.
Right. So, well, I will say that that was that was the position that we were looking at for this part-time programming support position, and I will say that caught us off guard. We did not find out about that until just when we got the budget, and we are looking at this as a professional position in the sense that we need people who will be, the caliber that we need in order for us to succeed As I said, this isn't the position where we are expecting the person to simply check in and check out books or do some other sort of more mundane tasks. This is a position in which we need someone with a talent for doing programming, a flair for that type of interaction with the public, and the ability to be creative and bring in the type of audiences that we want to see for the town of Trumbull. And so, yes, I would definitely prefer that this were a full-time position.
Okay, do we have, anybody have questions on any other section?
It's 2 full-time, 4 part-time each Sunday shift. And the reason why that is done is when the town wanted to go to a Sunday schedule, we did so, but it was under the assumption that we had to do it with overtime. That was part of the union agreement.
It's not a union requirement, but we had to have at least 2 full-time employees who could handle problem situations, understand the computer system, if the computer system went down, to restart it, to do all those kinds of things, supervise the building, handle problem people in the building. So we always had to have 2, which was our professional positions, which was reference, and then did the rest with 4 part-time, earning right now from the beginning earn $15 an hour. In the beginning it was maybe adding $6 to their rate. Now it's almost nothing. It's almost equal to what they're earning during the regular work week. Compared to other towns, we're probably the most cost effective as far as opening on Sundays. Most are spending $50,000 to $60,000 to open for less Sundays than we do.
You open Sundays in the winter.
We open
Correct.
in the beginning, after Labor Day, until the end of May.
And the people that are working on Sunday, are they working the rest of the week full-time, or you're just shifting their days?
Well, both are working part-time, work a regular 19 hours through the regular week, and then they work 4 hours on Sunday, and it's done rotation, like people who want to participate. And the full-time work their full 35 hours, and again, they sign up to work so many, so some might do 6 in a year, some might do 8, it depends on the individual. We also try and do the lower end of the financial package to make sure that we're stay within budget.
Maybe, I grew up in Massachusetts, that's the only time I've ever been paid hourly. Their laws are different here, but I thought in Connecticut it was only overtime after 40 hours.
Yeah, it depends on the union contract.
But these aren't union.
Yes.
Yes, they are.
Oh, I thought you had just said not because of union.
No, we're not required by union contract that they have to fill those positions.
The alternative would be hire separate people to work on Sunday, or the week I'm working on Sunday, I get a different day off. So I still only work my
Correct.
5 days. But some of the union right, and some of the union contracts, irrespective of what I'm doing, the Sunday is always at a time and a half premium. So you may or may not be able to work around that, depends on the individual contract.
Correct. I should note this previous system came from. We did year-round Sundays and Saturdays, and it's very difficult to schedule that on a 7-day week. The nice thing about this is that people, because of the overtime, people volunteer to actually do it. So that makes a huge difference.
But you must have some schedule rotation because you're normally open Monday through Saturday, so you're working off a 6-day week anyway.
Everybody works 1 out of 3 Saturdays as far as full time. So so you'll have a week where you're working 6 days, and then the following you're working 4.
So so they
work on Saturday and get the following Friday off. Our work week starts on Saturday.
okay, I get it. So you're doing a 6-4 instead of 2 5s. But that means on the 6th day, they're getting time and a half.
Not on Saturdays. Our Saturdays are.
Well, they have to
straight
because
time.
they've triggered 40 hours. They've triggered over 40.
No, the break is on
Because your
Friday night.
break is, I got it, your break's on Friday. So they haven't, now I understand.
It's complicated.
No, and he said where they broke the week, and I didn't pay enough attention. Okay. Questions on other parts of the... We're going very smoothly today. Nothing else, huh? Anything else you would like to add?
I think the only other was that in our capital expenditure that what was our IT budget for replacement of computers this year has been moved into the IT department.
Yeah, and we just met with Bill a little while ago, and we've been asking him to take a look at leasing and keeping up with them a little more. There is one other item on your maintenance contract. I'm confused. There's $1,500 for a telephone maintenance contract.
That's through the town. I believe it's Telser. I know it's a monthly billed.
Can you look into that? I thought I
I know it's
hate to
currently-
nitpick
it's
over
currently being
$1,500,
paid
but
out.
I'd like to see it.
I actually do have one other question.
Go ahead.
For electricity, were you guys just were you putting solar panels up over there?
We already had solar panels, but only on the new wing in the children's wing. We just had a new roof.
That was the
on the
roof,
new wing.
okay.
Right.
Sorry, I saw a lot of work up there, I just assumed it's a big old flat roof that solar panels were going over.
We do have solar on the children's wing.
And then Maria, on this one, we've zeroed out utilities to telephone. So I'm now totally baffled. Yeah, but they had no cell phones or no internet or nothing else that anybody else had. Okay. Okay.
They don't have a fax machine. I learned that.
Not a public one. Not a public one. We do phones.
Okay, but faxes can work off the VoIP system?
Not as good. They're work, but they're not that good. That's why they recommend the business line.
So, but then they're going to need to hang on to one fax line. So that's got to go back in there.
You really gotta go back by location and see.
Yeah.
That's where he has to go.
Two fax lines now as far as.
At this time, we didn't know how much to put in each location.
Okay.
It would be better at this point to put it in Bill's account until that's determined.
How about other phone lines on those VoIP systems? You say the fax doesn't work as well. What if you have a line to an alarm?
Probably keep the alarm line out. I would keep the alarm line out.
On.
But they do work. I mean, they will work.
Okay.
You got a 911 phone?
Yes.
I know I couldn't.
They all have that capability. They all have that capability to divert to that.
Okay. Can I ask how we're doing on our digital library? I don't use it anymore, so I've abandoned it.
It's about just over 5% of our circulation. We have two things now. We have Overdrive. There's still people are using it. It's still some frustration knowing where you are within the queue. We're buying heavily for our own users. And then we have Hoopla, which is all of the different digital things on that service. It's multiple users, so whatever's available, it's available anytime you want. So whether it's a movie, an audio, an ebook, you don't have to wait for anything. And that use is skyrocketing on that service.
Okay. But on Overdrive, you still have to buy so many copies for your own.
For the demand.
For the demand. Okay. All right. Last shot. Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Pleasure seeing you. Now that's the last department we're going to hear. Just to go over just a few housekeeping items, so everybody's clear on our revised schedule. We meet again next Tuesday here for the other half of the town departments. This Thursday, the full budget will be printed in the Trumbull Times, available to the public. It is already available online. It is already available in hard copy in the library. Next week on Tuesday, we meet here. On Thursday, we meet here. We have our first public hearing. We then go to the following week, March 1st. We will hear the Board of Education for the first time. We will do that in their auditorium. That was the best seating arrangement we could get. On March 11th, we will do our second public hearing, the Saturday public hearing. I will not be here. Already have, based on the original schedule, will not be in the town, will not be in the country. The second meeting with the Board of Ed, should we need a second meeting, if we ask them for information or we want to follow up, we will meet here on Monday, March 13th. I would suggest, if we don't have the Board of Ed, we still consider meeting and maybe getting a follow-up from Bill on all the numbers related to the new system, the new phone system. And perhaps, Maria, the rest of the numbers on what's come in and out of phones, so we have a chance to look at that. And then right now, we are looking at one voting evening, which is the Thursday at 6 o'clock right here. I think if we start at 6, we should be okay. If we need to extend our Cinderella clock, we can. But I think we can do this in one night. That will leave Maria ample time to turn this around and deliver it to the council in whatever format she normally does by the 24th, which is our deadline date. The council then has until the 30th of April to make any changes that they make. We have until May 25th to set the mill rate. I have some pretty severe concerns about what information we will or will not have available from the state by then. If we elect not to set a mill rate, the mill rate is set by the first selectman. According to the charter, there is no deadline for him to set that by. Whereas the new bills are due July 1st, the actual payment without penalty can be made right up until August the 1st. I'm going to try to look up, I just got a current information from our state rep. They have broken down, attempted to break down what we are and are not getting. Right now, for the fiscal year ending 18 versus 17, it looks like a loss of overall of $6,544,452. And just as a quick rundown, it looks like pilot will be put back, whoop-de-doo, $56,000. Pilot for colleges and hospitals will increase by $5,000. We'll lose $300 on the Mohegan Pequot Fund. He has zeroed out town road aid. That was $464. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's a zero change. It'll stay at $464,000. LOSIP will come back supposedly to the $450,000. We will lose $3,418,401 in ECS money. They will shift special education. Yep, they just keep playing. Special education will go up 1.65 million, but there will be an offset because you have to prove you're spending it on special education. Adult education goes up 2,000. Grants for municipal projects goes down 189 million. Excuse me, 189,000. I apologize. Yep, yeah, where'd that go? Yeah, municipal revenue sharing will go up by 327,000. There won't be any additional pilot. There'll be a payment because of the car tax cap of 48,000. And we will be billed for teachers' pension $5,476,968, making the net change $6,544,452. I had a conversation with a few people in Hartford who said, grab your wallet, some of it's going to happen.
So there's going to be some percentage of that.
They believe that all the revenue loss will happen. The only thing that might possibly have some wiggle room may be the pension payment, where we've asked two things. I personally have asked that they at least stagger it if it in fact becomes a reality, phase it in. The other thing Maria and I have discussed is we don't know where they pulled that $5.4 million number from, because the audit report we do annually, which goes to the town council, shows that last year the state paid into that pension on our behalf $12.7 million. Now, my math says 30% of 12.7 million isn't 5.4, it's 4 point something. Not saying that's still not a pretty horrific number to whack us within 1 year. Well, but I'm not sure what they're doing, because are they suddenly saying, okay, so we negotiated those pensions, we collected whatever it is we collected, we invested it in whatever manner, we underfunded it for gazillion years, and now you're all going to have to pay for our mismanagement of your teacher's pension money. So unless they planned on making a giant leap in their contribution, which I'm betting they don't, how does our share, which looks like it should be 4.3 million, become 5.4? Are they suddenly going to fund the ARC? Because I guarantee you they're not funding the ARC. They are also just passed some legislation to put off pension funding for a few more years, or there would have been a giant payment due. So, I mean, they keep mismanaging it and handing us the bill. They will tell you that that number alone, now that it's up to 6 million, will raise our taxes over 5% by itself if we did nothing in this budget. If we said to everybody, here you are, take what we gave you last year, our increase is 0. Taxes would rise to solve the governor's problem over 5%. So I don't know what that number is going to be, but I don't know how we make intelligent decisions without having a better information. I don't know how to play with $6.5 million loss. No, 5% if you're willing to zero out every department in town, which means none of the raises happen, and the Board of Ed. You have to zero out everybody and say, live with what you had last year. And actually, Maria's $6.5 million is more than 5%, isn't it? Because it was 4.9 when I thought it was 5.5 and change. Yeah, so almost 6% if we approve the budget as it sits in front of us. And that was, but we were working off a $5 million number, so now the number's $6 million. So it's got to be somewhere over 6%. Yeah, we'd be somewhere over 6%. Yeah, yeah. Well, she figured out 5 point something, allowing. You figured 5.9, but we were working off the state only taking away 5.5 million. Now we're at 6.5. Yeah, I'd say somewhere between 6 and 6.5, if we were to prove everything in front of us. Yeah, so that means that would be equal to everything we did in the last 3 years. So, as I get information, I'll be happy to share it with everybody. The state does not have to, therein lies our problem. The state does not have to finalize their budget until the first Wednesday in June, which is the 7th of June. They have been known to adjourn at midnight, pass a budget, but not pass any of the enabling legislation that spends the money in that budget. So while it does have all the components and our number should be finalized by June the 7th, we're supposed to set a mill rate on the 25th of May. Now, I haven't figured out how to make those numbers work. So that's going to be our bigger dilemma. Well, we have two dilemmas. If we assume that they're still going to charge us something, we have to decide, where do we sit on a 6.5% tax increase?
This may sound like a stupid question. Why do we have it that we require our mill rate before the state?
It's in the charter, and I actually was having a very short conversation with Tim about this before. It was done a couple of charter revisions ago, and at the time, and quite a few charter revisions ago, it was done, I want to say 10 or 15 years ago. The then tax collector insisted that he had to have our tax number in order to generate the bills in time to have the bills to the people by the first week of June. That he felt this overwhelming need for people to have a lot of notice to pay this bill. Personally, I think that's stupid. I think it would make more sense to amend our charter to be consistent with the state. While we're okay in their short year, the short year they have to finish the first week of May. But in their long budget year, they finish the first week of June.
I mean, it shouldn't be a hard date. It should be 7 days after the state sets their budget.
That could be, then it wouldn't be you're right, it would be a floating date. But in no case would it be later than the 16th of June.
Again, I can't speak for anyone in this room, forget about everyone in the town. I think everyone would rather pay what they actually have to pay in a shorter period than guess every year.
Well, yeah, either you guess or you set a mill rate when we have our deadline, and then you end up having to issue a supplemental bill later when you figure out what the state's really given you. Now, I don't remember, anybody in the room remember better than me, in the last 30 years I have never seen a supplemental tax bill go out in this town, other than the supplemental tax bill you get if you buy a new car. So we have always strived to have it done and have it balanced. I just don't know, given all the stuff that's sitting in front of us, how we do that. Or if we have to assume by the time we budget that the state is going to make us pay that entire amount, that the governor's chosen to balance his budget on our backs, either you cut expenses or you acknowledge that sooner or later the mill rate's going to be set to balance that, which includes a very large increase, probably the largest one we've seen in, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years? I don't remember setting one that exceeded 6%. So, like I said, I'll give you all the information as I get it. But those dates are the firm dates. Ours is the 24th of March, council is the 30th of April, mill rate is the 25th of May. If we do not set it on the 25th, by the 25th of May, it falls to the first selectman to set. There is no provision for when he has to set it. I did look at that. There is none. There is nothing, as I believe, in the state rules that give him a date he has to set it by. The rule becomes the practicality of at what point are you going to get the bills out? Because you want to get them out at some point. Certainly certainly they have to be out by the end of June, because there are some people who will pay it the 1st of July. So that's where we are.
That $6 million, does that go up to Hartford?
Oh yeah, we write him a check.
So you write him a check?
Yep. Give them another $6 million from Trumbull to misspend, because the whatever millions we send them right now isn't enough. Somewhere there is a report, and actually I'm going to, I can ask David for that. I want to know how much money the town of Trumbull sends to the state of Connecticut. I'm curious. So I can guarantee you it's multiples more than we get back. And given what we're about not to get back, I mean, we're effectively looking at almost no funding whatsoever from the state. $2.5 million, $2 million to special ed. That's it.
And ask him what the ARC payment is.
Yeah, I'm curious. What's the ARC? What's the ARC? 'Cause we're paying the ARC. What's the ARC on the state teacher's pension?
Now that we're paying into the pensions, they should have been paid into a long time ago.
There may be a report. We can probably get that.
10 or 20% or something?
Oh, As a percentage, I'm trying to remember what our ARC is as a percentage. It's got to be better. It's got to be more than. It's got to be way more than 10%. Their ARC. I mean, ARC's about $4 million. We've got it right here. So. No, the ARC of the state. The ARC for the state pension. Our ARC, we're making ours. Well, actually, we could have a problem doing that too now.
Well, the ARC here is like 45%, right, or something. We're at 40, 45%.
No, that's the percent funding. That's the percent funded. That's not the ARC.
Didn't the state bond wants to put money into their pension fund?
I don't think they did. Bridgeport did. A couple of towns did. The state allowed. There was a state law that allows the town to bond money for their pensions. The problem is there's a whole lot of strings attached. Then you must make the ARC every year. And that could be risky because of the rates you might be paying on the bond versus what you're getting on your money. At one point, when I was on the pension board, we asked the actuaries, we said, run a few scenarios for us. Should we borrow money for the pension? Should we find somehow, hit the budget for $10 million, make a big lump sum payment? What's the best way to get to the number? And they ran all the numbers. They came back and they presented it to us and they said, the reality is just pay the ARC. Don't go get a big sum of money to throw into it. Don't go bond money. Just pay what we tell you need to pay us every year. That is the best way to fund your pension properly. So we paid them a whole lot of money to study it for us, or not really a lot, but to come back and tell us, just do what we've been telling you for years. But you need to understand, there were years when the ARC was only requested at $1 million, and we'd put in 50,000, or nothing, or 100,000, and then the ARC went to 2 million, and we'd put in 75,000. So, we're the victim of our own. While we say the state did it, we did it too, just not on quite as large a scale as the state chose to do it. And we bit that bullet and we corrected it, so we fund the ARC. And I'm betting you that even if we give the state this amount and they put in another 2/3, they're still not funding the ARC. Because I can't believe the state's been funding the ARC on their pension. So we will keep progressing. Knowing how the General Assembly operates, I am not optimistic that we'll have solid numbers before somebody bangs a gavel and they adjourn sine die. And that is at midnight. They literally do that at 11:59.9. So I don't have a lot of hope. Maybe they'll start, maybe the committees will put out numbers that shift this a little. But the reality is, if they don't make us pay this $5 million, they got to find some other way to find it. And the interesting thing, when you look at the initial proposed budget, not only are they taking the $5 million from us and all the towns across the state, they're still raising some taxes, so they're still spending more money. Even after they've pawned off $400 and something million onto the towns, they're still looking to spend more. You think they kind of get the message that they kind of need to slow down their spending. But it's not at all encouraging. You send $4 million back to us, $5 million, $6 million back to us. Stop spending. So we're going to be paying in a number of ways. But anybody has any ideas? I am more than willing to consider them. But I don't have a lot, given this situation, to offer anybody. So I'll forward this email when I get home to a computer. I hate trying to forward emails from my phone. I know I should be able to, but it doesn't always work. Did you have the one David just sent? Okay. Yeah, and I'll stay in touch with him. I spoke to him yesterday. Marie and I are constantly, Loretta's sending me the information they get from CABE, because CABE started to analyze what was happening to all the boards of education too. So we're taking information from any source we can possibly and trying to get their take on it. But the comment I got yesterday was, I don't have a lot of hope. Part of me says, I'm not saying that our paying a share of this pension was wrong. I'm not sure why they waited so long to do it till they were in so much trouble. If they had let us all actively participate from the beginning, it's the sudden whack that's going to hurt us. The other thing about removing the Board of Ed and some of the other funding, there have been times I've wanted to say to the state, you know what, just take your money. And you know what else I would suggest. But take away all the mandates. Just stop costing us money. Do they really think they need to tell Trumbull, excuse me, how to run a Board of Education? I mean, set some rules and say, if you meet this criteria, you don't have to follow all these mandates. And if you can maintain it, you don't have to follow these mandates. These mandates convert to money. So if you're not going to pay us, don't make us do it. Let us run our system. We do a good job. Why do you have so many rules on a town like us? So take your $3 million and let's figure out $3 million worth of unfunded mandates that we don't think we need to do. I mean, we might still do some of them. But, you know, we have a Board of Education and a staff that knows what they need to do to run their schools. Let them run it. They're doing a good job. But half of the stuff is paperwork and reports to the state that somebody decides, you know, we should report on. That creates an awful lot of space, an awful lot of time in a couple of employees. So do I think none of that's going to happen? I doubt it. They're going to take the money. Whether they'll take the mandates, I don't know. But we have forwarded those suggestions to our representatives in Hartford and asked them to keep that in mind. There were some mandates, unfunded mandates, on the governor's proposal, but every one of them I read didn't save us any money, didn't really apply to us. So I'd like them to put some serious unfunded mandates on that list, not the ones they have. But I would suggest everybody review anything they can and certainly give those people feedback. That's our best shot at this point. So that's it. Any other questions on our schedule? Everybody able to make it? We're good? Okay, and then hopefully, I'm not sure, and Andy said he would make our night meetings. So we will see Andy back then. All right, if there is nothing else then, thank you very much. We are adjourned.